There's a number most people never think about. It's not your salary. It's not your net worth. It's not even how many hours you work. It's the ratio of value you create to time you personally spend creating it. For most people, that ratio is 1-to-1. 1 hour worked, 1 hour paid every single day. But there's a small group of people whose ratio looks completely different. They might work the same 40 hours, or fewer, and generate 10, 100, sometimes 1,000 times the output of someone trading time for money. This isn't luck. It isn't some exclusive club you need a special handshake to join. It's leverage. And by the end of this video, you'll see why almost everything you've been taught about building wealth has been quietly missing the most important variable in the equation. Here's an uncomfortable truth about how most people think about money. They believe the path to wealth is simple. Work harder, earn more, spend less, save the rest. And yes, those things matter. Discipline matters. Effort matters. But they're not the whole story. The people who break free from that cycle aren't necessarily smarter. They're not all born into wealth. What they understand, at some point, is that human effort has a ceiling. Your time is finite. Your energy is finite. But value creation doesn't have to be. The difference between someone who earns $60,000 a year their whole life and someone who builds a $10 million business isn't usually talent. It's the structure through which they apply their energy. That structure has a name. It's called leverage. Leverage is any mechanism that multiplies your output beyond what your direct effort alone could produce. And once you see it, really see it, you start noticing it everywhere. In every great fortune, behind every surprising success story, and in the quiet decisions made years before the results ever showed up. Let's start somewhere unexpected. Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." He was talking about physics. But he might as well have been describing the economy. A lever is a tool that allows a small force, applied at the right point, to move something far larger than that force alone could. The longer the lever, the greater the multiplication. Wealth works the same way. Think about what separates a janitor from a landlord. Both work, both show up. But one earns money once for every hour they put in. The other earns money from an asset that continues producing, while they sleep, while they vacation, while they do something else entirely. The landlord isn't necessarily smarter, but they've placed a lever under their effort. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this is something most personal finance content completely skips over. Leverage isn't just about money. Most people hear the word leverage and think loans, debt, risk. And yes, financial leverage is real and powerful, but it's only one of several forms. The richest people in the world aren't just using one kind of leverage, they're stacking multiple kinds simultaneously. Let's walk through them, because understanding each one and how they interact is the real education. Here's a question that should bother you more than it does. Why does a surgeon earn more in 1 hour than a grocery store worker earns in a month? Your first instinct might be, because the surgery is more valuable, and that's true, but why is it more valuable? It's not because the surgeon moves faster. It's not raw effort. It's because behind that 1 hour of work is 15 or 20 years of accumulated understanding, the kind that can identify, in seconds, what would take anyone else a lifetime to recognize. Knowledge is leverage. It multiplies the value of every hour you work. This is why people who invest in rare, deep, or highly applicable skills consistently out-earn people who stay generalists. The surgeon, the patent attorney, the structural engineer, they've built something no one can easily replicate or replace. But here's what's often missed. Knowledge leverage isn't just about your career. It compounds. Think about Warren Buffett. He's been quoted saying he reads 500 pages a day. That sounds like an exaggeration. Maybe it is. But the principle is real. Every new piece of financial knowledge he absorbs doesn't exist in isolation. It connects to everything he already knows, forming a web of insight that allows him to see value in places no one else is looking. That's compounding, applied to the mind, not just money. The person who spends 5 years mastering copywriting, investing, or software engineering isn't just 5 years ahead. They're standing at a fundamentally different vantage point. Their next decision is made from higher ground. Knowledge doesn't depreciate the way machinery does. It doesn't get diluted the way currency does. And it can't be taken from you. Which leads directly to the next form of leverage, one that most people never learn to use at all. Imagine two bakeries. The first is run by a baker who bakes everything himself. He's talented, customers love him, he works from 4 in the morning until 7 at night, and he earns well, for one person's labor. The second is run by someone who can bake, but who spends most of her time training others to bake as well as she does. She opens a second location, then a third. She still bakes occasionally, but now a dozen bakers are producing, and she earns from all of them. Who has more leverage? This is the distinction between doing and orchestrating, between a job and a business, between producing value yourself and building a system that produces value through others. This isn't a new idea, but the emotional resistance to it is surprisingly strong. Many people feel uncomfortable profiting from others' work, but that framing misses something important. In any functional business, value flows in both directions. The employees receive income, skills, stability, and purpose. The owner absorbs the risk, provides the capital, and creates the structure that makes those jobs exist. The question isn't whether it's right or wrong to build a team. The question is, what kind of player do you want to be? Henry Ford didn't build the Model T with his own hands. He understood that the leverage of organized human effort, applied systematically at scale, could manufacture something that no single craftsman could match in price, speed, or volume. He didn't work harder than the men on his assembly line. He thought differently about how effort could be structured. The gap between high-income earners and wealthy individuals is almost always here. High earners trade their own time. The wealthy create systems that trade time on their behalf. And once a system is in place, a new kind of leverage becomes possible. Now we get to the form of leverage people talk about most and understand the least. Financial leverage means using borrowed capital to control an asset larger than what you could afford with your own money alone. A simple example, you have $50,000. You could buy $50,000 worth of real estate outright, or you could use that $50,000 as a down payment on a $250,000 property, borrow the rest, and control 5 times as much asset. If that property appreciates by 10%, the unlevered investor made $5,000. The levered investor made $25,000 on the same initial capital. That's why the wealthy seem to grow wealth faster than arithmetic would suggest. But, and this is critical, leverage cuts both ways. If the property drops 10%, the levered investor loses $25,000. That's half their initial capital, wiped out by a market move that, to the unlevered investor, was merely disappointing. Financial leverage without understanding is not a wealth-building tool. It's a wealth destruction device with a pleasant-sounding name. The people who use it well share a few common traits. They leverage appreciating assets, not depreciating ones. They use borrowed capital to buy things that generate cash flow, so the asset pays for itself while it grows. And they maintain what investors call a margin of safety, enough buffer that a bad month doesn't erase everything. A car loan is leverage, but a car loses value while you pay interest. A mortgage on a rental property is leverage, but a rental property can generate income that covers the mortgage and then some. Same mechanism, completely different outcome. The difference is the asset underneath. The wealthy don't just borrow more, they borrow strategically, on assets that work while they wait. Which brings us to perhaps the most underrated form of leverage in the modern world. In 1994, almost no one had heard of a man named Jeff Bezos. 3 years later, Amazon went public. By the end of the decade, his name had reached tens of millions. Not because he knocked on millions of doors, not because he personally met millions of customers, but because he built a brand, a reputation, and eventually a platform, and those things spoke on his behalf at a scale no single voice could match. This is media leverage, the ability to reach, persuade, and build trust with people you have never met. For most of human history, this kind of leverage was available only to institutions, newspapers, television studios, publishing houses with enormous capital. The barrier to being heard was high. The barrier to being trusted was higher. That changed. Today, a YouTube channel with 10,000 subscribers can generate as much influence on a specific topic as a mid-size magazine. A newsletter with 5,000 loyal readers can launch a product that sells out in 24 hours. A single viral piece of content can introduce a person's ideas to more people in a week than a classroom teacher will reach in a lifetime. The leverage here isn't just about followers, it's about trust at scale. Think about what happens when you publish a video, a newsletter, an article, or a course. You record it once. It travels indefinitely. Someone in Tokyo can watch something you made in your bedroom 3 years ago and become a customer today. That's time leverage embedded inside media. Reputation works the same way, but slower and deeper. A person known for expertise, honesty, and results attracts opportunities they never have to pursue. Clients refer other clients. Doors open without knocking. This is sometimes called social capital, and it compounds just as reliably as financial capital does. The person building a reputation is planting trees they'll live in later. The person ignoring it is perpetually starting from scratch. Here's something most people never consider about their own productivity. You probably have a morning routine. You probably know your best hours for focused work. You probably have habits, some useful, some not, that run on autopilot. Those habits are systems, and systems are leverage. The difference between a good system and a bad one isn't discipline, it's design. Ray Dalio, who built one of the most successful hedge funds in history, has spoken publicly about his obsession with building repeatable processes. His firm, Bridgewater, is known for its radical transparency. Every meeting recorded, every decision documented, every mistake examined. Not because of a desire for control, but because of a belief. If a good decision can be made once, it can be encoded into a process so it happens consistently, without requiring the same amount of thought every time. That's the power of a system. It removes decision fatigue, it reduces human error, it creates consistent results at scale. Think about how a franchise operates. McDonald's serves roughly 70 million customers a day. No single genius is making all of those hamburgers perfectly. The system is. Recipes, training protocols, equipment layouts, all standardized so that someone who has worked there for 2 weeks produces the same product as someone who has worked there for 20 years. The genius of the franchise model is that it converts human skill into a transferable process. The founder's knowledge doesn't stay locked in one person's head, it becomes a system, and the system multiplies. You can apply this at any scale. The freelancer who builds a client onboarding process, a content creation workflow, or an automated invoicing system isn't just saving time, they're building leverage. They're ensuring that more of their hours produce output, and fewer are spent reinventing wheels. The question to ask yourself isn't, what should I do today? The better question is, what can I build once that will do this for me forever? We've talked about borrowing capital. We've talked about systems and teams. Now let's talk about the most fundamental form of leverage in the economy, and the one most workers have the least of: ownership. When you own a piece of something, a business, a property, an investment, a piece of intellectual property, you participate in its upside without necessarily participating in every hour of its operation. This is the structural divide that separates employees from owners. Not hard work, not intelligence. Ownership. An employee earns wages, income directly linked to hours worked. When they stop working, the income stops. An owner earns returns, income linked to the performance of an asset. When they sleep, the asset may still be generating. Now, here's what's often lost in the employee versus entrepreneur conversation. Ownership doesn't require starting a business. You can own stocks, fractional ownership of real companies. You can own intellectual property, a book, a song, a piece of software that earns royalties indefinitely. You can own real estate that appreciates and generates rent. Every time someone buys an index fund, they're buying a small piece of hundreds of companies. They're becoming an owner. At a scale proportional to their investment, yes, but an owner nonetheless. This matters because the 20th century economy rewarded labor. The 21st century economy increasingly rewards ownership and the ability to scale without proportional effort. The person who understands this starts looking at every purchase differently. Not what does this cost, but does this make me an owner or a consumer? A course that improves your skill is ownership of knowledge. A stock purchase is ownership of a business's future earnings. Starting a side project is ownership of potential future value. Ownership is patient. It doesn't pay off immediately, but it compounds in ways that wages never can. So here's the picture, assembled. The wealthy don't just earn more, they've learned to place levers under their effort. They grow knowledge that multiplies the value of every hour they work. They build systems that trade time on their behalf. They use borrowed capital carefully on assets that produce. They build reputations and platforms that speak for them at scale. They design processes that generate consistent results without their constant presence. And they own things, so that time and growth work in their favor instead of against them. None of this is reserved for the extraordinarily gifted, but almost none of it is taught. School teaches compliance, how to show up, follow instructions, and trade time. Those aren't useless skills, but they're not sufficient skills for the world we live in. Here's what I want you to sit with. Leverage isn't immoral. It isn't a cheat code. It's simply the recognition that human effort, intelligently structured, can produce results that human effort alone cannot. The industrial worker who found a way to organize his factory's output created something. The author who wrote a book that's still selling 30 years later created something. The investor who deployed capital into a business that employed 100 people created something. What they all did was stop thinking about wealth as a function of how hard they worked, and start thinking about it as a function of what they built. Time is the resource no one gets more of, but leverage is what allows a finite amount of time to produce an almost infinite amount of value. The question isn't whether to use it. The question is how long you'll wait before you start. If this kind of thinking is what you want more of, the kind that reframes how you see money, time, and building for the long term, consider subscribing. This channel is for people who think seriously about financial independence. Not quick wins, not hype, just clear thinking and real principles. We'll see you in the next one.